Thanks for downloading this edition of The Why Factor from the BBC, a programme that seeks to find out why we do the things we do. I hope you enjoy it. How do you start your day? It's a more complicated question than you realise, and that's because you probably don't think about it very much. Much of what we do every day. We create order. We have habits.
We come face to face with lots of decisions every day, from tying our shoes in the morning to choosing which way we want to go to work. And we kind of have to prioritise different tasks that are more complicated than others that don't change a lot. Because the world is so complex, it's important to automate very simple behaviours which frees up our brains to focus on more complicated tasks.
That's Dr. Claire Gillen of Trinity College Dublin. And as she explains, we are all largely creatures of habit. I'm Shuli Ghosh, and this is The Why Factor on the BBC World Service. From the minute we get up, to the way we make breakfast, how we drive the car or ride a bike, even the way we tie our shoelaces. These are everyday habits we do without thinking. And that's a good thing, because if we had to make conscious decisions about every single activity, our brains would just clog up. Right, let's go. So off to work, lock the door. There are habits we try to build to improve our lives.
What makes us happy? Relationships. So what are some habits that you could do to strengthen your relationships? You could get in the habit of calling your parents every day. One of the habits that we formed in our household that worked really well was to give warm hellos and goodbyes. So every time anybody comes in or leaves our apartment, they get a really warm greeting so that you really feel recognized and acknowledged as you come and go. It made a huge difference in the atmosphere of our house.
Once you form a habit, you do it automatically. In fact, you might be surprised to know just how much of your behaviour happens without you thinking about it.
I'm not sure that people realize that it's as high as 40%, because some people will say to me, I have no habits. And I'm like, well, do you brush your teeth every morning? Do you put on a seatbelt when you get into a car? I think people underestimate how many habits shape our day. People also underestimate how valuable they can be in making certain challenging aspects a lot easier.
Gretchen Rubin is a best-selling author on happiness and habits.
If you can get the habits to work for you, it is just enormously helpful. Being able to do something consistently over time.
There are habits we try to build. So, can our habits be exploited? Well, yes. It turns out that the very behaviour that lets us navigate our lives more easily also makes us a target for the marketing industry. By and large, it sounds as though we're quite predictable. We have patterns. And if you can work out the patterns, then you can exploit that.
That's right. And that means there's an arms race between the people that want to exploit our automatic tendencies and us as an individual that want not to be exploited. And as a little poor consumer, you're probably at the weaker end of that arms race up against multinationals that have spent a lot of time doing marketing and studying your tendencies.
And not only can businesses exploit our habits, they can encourage us to develop new ones.
There's two types of influence online. There's persuasion and there's coercion. Persuasion is helping people do things they want to do, and coercion is getting people to do things they don't want to do.
Nir Eyal is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and the author of Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. 10 years ago, the idea of staring at a small screen, endlessly checking for anything new, was unthinkable. Now it's an everyday routine. But why are we hooked on this need for constant monitoring? Have we been persuaded or coerced?
Sophocles said that nothing vast enters the life of mortals without a curse. So of course there's going to be bad sides to technology. Of course there are going to be costs, just like there were costs to the agricultural revolution. There's costs to the industrial revolution. Of course there's costs with the information age that we live in today. On the whole, I think these are fantastic technologies, but of course the price that we pay is with our attention and with our time.
Nir Eyal studies the hooks companies use to attract us to their products. He also offers suggestions on how we can manage the habits which have become nearly universal in the digital age, like checking your phone dozens of times a day.
Every hook has 4 steps. These trigger, an action, a reward, and an investment. And so the way we would break a bad habit is to put distance in between those steps. So you would remove the triggers. So a simple thing that everyone should do, take 15 minutes to make sure that you disable notifications. About 2/3 of people who have a smartphone never change their notification settings. That's madness. We can't keep letting the app makers interrupt us on their schedule. Take 15 minutes and adjust your notification settings so you're not constantly interrupted. We can make the actions more difficult, meaning uninstall apps that don't serve you throughout your day. So I love Twitter, I love Facebook, but I don't have them on my phone. I only use them on my desktop because I don't want to use them throughout the day. We can delay the reward. So when I read articles online, I found that I would fall into this vortex of reading more news and more articles and more content. And so instead, I save all that into an app which I can then read later in my day. And then finally, the fourth step, you don't want to keep investing in services that have no end in sight.
But when do these hooks move from the marketable to the malign? When does a habit turn into an addiction?
A habit is defined as an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. There's nothing good or bad inherently about a habit. It's about 50% of what you do every day is done out of habit, and this serves us. Addictions, however, are always bad. So the definition of addiction is a persistent compulsive dependency on a behavior or substance that harms the user. So what that means is that you're not actually addicted to something unless it harms you. You want to stop, but can't. So when people say I'm addicted to running, that's not really exactly right. You might really enjoy running, but unless it hurts you and you can't stop, that's not an addiction. Now, what happens with products online, Facebook or email or Instagram or WhatsApp, people like these products. Sometimes they're time wasters, but for the vast majority of us, it's not an addiction because if we're really honest with ourselves, we're not freebasing Facebook and injecting Instagram into our veins. They're not something that most people, if they really want.
It's hard to break bad habits, but we can also develop good ones to make us happy.
If you think about what you want more of in your life or less of in your life, then you can think about how the habits could support you in meeting that aim, so you're working towards it consistently.
Gretchen Rubin is the author of Better Than Before, What I Learned About Making and Breaking Habits.
Now, in terms of what's a bad habit and what's a good habit, it's a little bit of phrasing, right? Because a lot of times it's a good habit or a bad habit, depending on how you frame it. What happens for a lot of us, you might try and fail to change a habit over and over. You know, you've made the same New Year's resolution for 5 years in a row. And you get discouraged, and people often start blaming themselves. I have no willpower. I have no self-control. I'm lazy. But part of it is that people will try to do something in a way that's wrong for them. And to take the most obvious example, morning people and night people. Research shows this is a real thing. It's largely genetically determined and also a function of age. And yet, we're told often, if something's important to you, if you want to exercise, you should get up early and do it first thing. But for night people, they can probably barely get out of bed in time to get to work or school. The idea that they're going to get up early and exercise, it's not going to work for them. And it's not because they're lazy or they don't have self-control. It's just that this habit is not set up in a way that will help them to succeed.
And there are an infinite amount of ways to build habits. It's all down to motivation.
I heard a habit of one woman. So she wanted to get up on time, but she lived by herself. So how could she hold herself accountable for getting up on time every day? She was just hitting the snooze alarm over and over. So what she did is she posted a very embarrassing Facebook post and set it to automatically send every day unless she got up and went to her desk and turned it off. So I thought that was a very funny habit as a way to get herself to get up out of bed every day. Anyone who wants to can tap into the power of habits, but they have to do it in the way that's going to work for them.
So, can we think ourselves into habits that are good for us? I mean, if I keep telling myself the gym is a great fun place, will I start to go there automatically?
I don't think so, because talking to yourself in your conscious mind and thinking through something isn't really going to affect these deeper brain structures, the basal ganglia, which are actually controlling your habit. So the best thing you can do to get yourself a habit to go to the gym is unfortunately to go to the gym over and over again until the act of going there doesn't require you to talk yourself into it. It's just, I go there at 5 every day. I've been doing that for 3 weeks and that's now what I do.
The human brain is a wonderful thing. It can steer us through most of our day without much conscious thought. We are indeed creatures of habit, but that doesn't mean our habits can't be changed.
We are conscious creatures, but it looks like consciousness isn't needed for quite a lot of our everyday dealings with the world. So that raises the pressing question, what is the purpose of consciousness? And that's what makes the question of the extent to which we're creatures of habit so fascinating. As a philosopher thinking about habits, we're inevitably going to be drawn back to Aristotle. He talked about habits in the context of becoming the kind of person you are. And his picture was we accept that we're creatures of habits, that a lot of what we do in situations are going to be automatic, habitual response to the situation. But that doesn't mean we're not responsible. That doesn't mean that it's not us that's doing it. It does mean that we've got this big responsibility to train ourselves to have the good habits. So if you want to lead the good life and be a good person, you've got to recognize that you're a creature of habit and then go down the hard path of training yourself to have the right kinds of habits.
I'm Shuli Ghosh, and you've been listening to The Why Factor. The producer was Sandra Canthel. You can listen again to this programme and hear other Why Factors, such as why we work with our hands and why words matter, on our website. And we'd love to hear your views and suggestions on future topics. You can reach us at yfactor@bbc.com.